Hey everybody, Robert with RC Archery. In today's Tuesday's tip of the week, we're going to talk about thumb button releases. I'm going to go over my steps that I take when I am unboxing a brand new thumb release. And then the last half of the video, I'm going to talk you through bow changes and shooting them, what you're looking for hand positioning, and then how you're executing with them. In our members only video this week, I'm going to go over my method to shooting a thumb release. It's probably different than what pretty much anyone has talked about or gone over, but it's extremely simple and it's very easy for me to repeat, and also actually helps me with steadying my float through that execution, and it makes it just more consistent from one shot to the next. In our YouTube shorts this week, we're going to talk about different types of thumb buttons, the shapes of the handle, how that affects what the thumb trigger actually is placement and where it goes in the hand. And then we're also going to go over 2, 3, and 4 finger releases, the leverage differences, and then also what you can expect from one to the other as far as how it affects potentially your anchor point, but also just the leverage and the feel and softness of your hand there. All right, guys, let's get started. All right, so when I first pull a new thumb release out of the package, whether I bought it brand new or I bought it used from someone else, there are some steps that I take on pretty much every release just to get a baseline set up and so that I know where the starting point is for everything that I'm using. Right off the bat, the first things that I'm looking at is I'm going to usually adjust this thumb knob, whatever that release may be, to get it initially set up in my hand where I think that I need it and want it. For me personally, that usually means that I can take the corner of my thumb where that crease is and I'm setting it on the edge of the release, and then I want the tip of my thumb to just curl and wrap around it. So it's like this, and I want it to be pretty natural like this when it gets to that position. The main thing is you want the meaty part of your thumb to be able to wrap and get to the front of that trigger. One thing that I've heard John Dudley say before is called shaping the trigger. I actually think that's very good visual, like mentally visual representation of what we're talking about there, because I really am just letting my thumb kind of depress and melt and shape itself around that thumb trigger. It's personally why I like the bigger thumb barrels like this generally on most releases, is because it just fits my hand better. But everybody is different. Everybody has a little bit different positioning there. If you balance this release in between your index and your middle finger, this thumb position will be in a totally different spot than if you're really torquing down on it with these outer fingers. What I will say is, for me personally, the idea behind this is I'm balancing it between my index and my middle finger because I want a consistent position on this release when I'm on the loop. I want it to be balanced out. I don't want it to be torqued in one direction or the other. It also makes it easier as a repeatable starting position for me. So that's what I am looking for whenever I set these up. The next thing that I'm doing is taking some Allen wrenches. They come in a package like this when you get the new release. If they don't, if you have your own Allen wrenches, I'm going through and I'm checking the travel of the trigger. I don't necessarily expect it to be a certain way even when they're brand new out of the package, but what I will do is find where the travel adjustment is on a release. I will lock these releases down and just depress the cocking lever to get them set up like you would when you were going to shoot them. On this release, this is a Carter just because you actually take this screw here, you'll turn it clockwise, and I do this very slowly until it just pops this open. It'll act like you fired the release and it'll click and open it up. From that position, wherever this Allen wrench is, then I will take it and turn it back one number of a clock. So if I'm here and I'm looking at it from this direction, I will turn it back from, like, if it stops and it opens up here, I will turn it back to the 11. It's about an eighth of a turn. I think of it as one number on a clock because that's easier for me to visualize. But that gets you to where it's a safe amount of travel to where it's not going to fire prematurely as you're drawing the release back. But it also gets it to where it doesn't have movement. I don't want movement in my thumb releases. It's just like the same thing with the hinge. After a while, you start feeling that movement and you can jump the gun on it. You can get jumpy with it. You can feel it. It'll change your shot. All I want is to have a little bit of pressure built up on here, and that pressure is what fires it, not the movement. So that's what I'm looking for when I initially set these up. Now, if I have an extra thumb button and this is just another brand that I'm getting or whatever, and I've used these before and I kind of know what trigger tension I want on it, I actually pull it on my scale and I will pull it back with the scale and see where it trips. And then I will adjust that trigger tension until it gets in that range of what I know that I typically like. And then I use that as my starting position so that when I go out and I start shooting, and we get into this later in this video, then you can actually see what you're getting and adjust it for your shot timing. A couple quick things that I want to address when it comes to the bow. Misconception that people have, and then just if you've never used a handheld release or gone from one to another and changed them, you may not know what to look for. The big thing is when you're running from one handheld release to another, the distance between the finger beds and where it hooks to the loop are different from one release to the next. And even in the same brands, some models will have a different length than others. So when that happens, you're not changing the draw length of the bow. The draw length of the bow is set up for the measurement that you need that runs from the bow to your bow, your shoulder here on your bow side, with that string touching your face and the correct anchor points. That never changes. What will change is the length of your loop. If I go from one release, like one of these Carter releases that I have now, and I shoot another model of a Carter release, maybe a knot to it or a too simple, the neck length on those is a little shorter. So for me, I will need a longer loop to have the same anchor point and to have the same leverage over the back half of this bow. And the same thing if you go to something like the Ultra View, like if you're shooting their thumb button release or the hinge release they have, the neck length on those is really long. It's longer than a standard release. You will need a shorter loop than what you normally would. So keep that in mind. The other thing is peep height. This changes a lot based on the release, and it's because some of these releases have a hook point that is closer to the index or closer to the middle finger. If they're one or the other, it will change the height of your peep because it's changing where it's anchoring on your face. So adjust the peep height by drawing the bow back with your eyes closed, getting to a comfortable anchor position that is easy for you to repeat, and then adjust that peep. And then from there, when you're shooting, you can fine tune it and move it a little bit and do what you need to make it the most accurate for you and the best comfortability for you from that point. All right, now we're getting into shooting the release and getting it onto the bow. This is the fun part. So one thing to get out of the way really quickly, where are we anchoring when we use a handheld release and what are we looking for? And the main thing is we want a handheld release for the finger beds of that release to run through these middle portions of your finger. You want it to be in here like this. You don't want it to be really deep and you don't want it to be really far out on your fingers. For a couple reasons. One, it's going to adjust your hand shape. So if I have this release where I want it to be, I have a very flat back hand. And when I do that, it creates a flat, straight line through the D-loop, through my joints on my body. And that helps me have a better pull on the bow. If I dig this way into my fingers, then you can see that I then have everything at an angle. This is angling up now from the loop, causes problems. If I'm way out on my fingertips, then it does pretty much the opposite. It just pulls everything down and it makes you pull wonky on the release. So what I recommend is have it in the middle of your hand. It's nothing new. A lot of people talk about this and this is what you're looking for, but that's what we're gonna start with, is that good flat hand position to where when we get to anchor, we can work through our shot and it feels a lot smoother. So from here, I am just looking at what I am doing with my shot and my shooting. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to address the trigger. So when I'm getting into anchor, I'm going to place my thumb on there. Does it feel comfortable? Do I need to adjust my thumb trigger to where it's hitting or getting to a certain spot in my thumb a little bit differently? This is huge. A lot of people overlook this and they just grab a release and start shooting it. But if you get the thumb barrel adjusted to the right spot in your hand, it makes the shot way easier to go off because you have better pressure against the front of the trigger. You have better leverage over that trigger to be able to shoot it. Now, another thing that I'm doing with this is I am looking at how the tension is set on this thumb release. So when I am shooting this release, I'm going to work through my normal shot no matter what. and I am looking at the timing of this shot and what I am getting out of it. And if it takes too long to fire the release, then it needs to be set up with a lighter trigger. If the release is firing too quickly, then it obviously needs to have a heavier trigger. So when I am doing this, I am looking at just purely the timing of my shot. And I'm not going to do this necessarily from one shot. I will shoot multiple shots and I will just see how things are going, because sometimes if you don't preload the trigger the same every time, you can run into some issues here. When it comes to preloading the trigger, a lot of people talk about this. My recommendation for this is you want to have the trigger set up initially with enough heaviness in it, enough tension in the trigger required to fire that release that you can feel the thumb press into the thumb barrel, and the skin and the pad of that thumb, the meat there, it pushes and shapes around that trigger. That's why I like that word, shaping. You want to feel it move. Now, everybody is a little different. Some people don't want it to be where it shapes and presses in as hard as others. Depending on how you're shooting the release, you will want this different as well. Now, if you're having problems with the thumb trigger being hard to have it go off from one shot to the next, you're just pulling through the shot and it's kind of an issue for you, a trick that was told to me is set the thumb barrel very heavy to where you really have to put some pressure into it at anchor and you have to get engaged. You want your hand to have some tension in it. You want everything to be locked in place and you're just pulling through your shot, just similar to like a resistance style release. This is allowing you to just focus on pulling, just working the shot and just making it happen. The same thing if you're dealing with a little bit of aiming anxiety, anticipation, jumpiness. If you set that trigger pretty heavy, it's going to make you get into the shot, make you be active, and make you be aggressive. And usually what I find is people have their trigger tension too light. They're not very aggressive on it. They're timid, they start and stop, their thumb is relaxing coming off the barrel during their execution, and that's why they're hanging up and having problems. So a lot of the times the easiest fix to that is crank up the pressure needed on that thumb trigger, get aggressive, and make your body work through the shot. Make it a longer shot process, something that lasts 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 seconds before it goes off. You don't want it necessarily going off in the first couple seconds right after you decide to engage and start your shot. If you're like myself, we'll go through the members only video this week. I'm going to tell you how I'm setting this up and the way that I'm doing this, because I also had that problem of hanging up or my thumb coming off the tension of the trigger, and I have found a way to create my shot execution to eliminate that problem. I have actively built something in for it, but that is the biggest things that I will give you and my takeaways when we're using these releases. Now, when it comes to shot timing, what is ideal? What are you looking for? I'm going to link a video here in this. You can click on it. I encourage you to go watch it. It's a first-person view looking through my scope. It's everything you need to know in regards to shot timing, what your overall window looks like, what your ideal windows look like, and what you're striving for whenever you're adjusting your releases for the final timing of it. All right, one final thing that I'm going to go over really quick that helps me a lot, and I wanted to pass this along. You see it a little bit better on this release because the thumb barrel is silver, but I use grip tape on the thumb barrel. It's skateboarding grip tape. There's multiple different types. You can get this, you put it on there. You have to heat it up to activate the glue. If you've never used that before, a hairdryer works really well. You just put it on there, heat it up, it works. I like that a lot because it gives my thumb something to kind of grab and hold against. If you don't have a thumb barrel that's aggressive, so like if it's pretty smooth, this will help you a lot. You can also play around with thickness of the thumb barrel. If you're somebody that's in between what you would like for it to be on thickness, you can add something a little bit thicker on there to get some grip, but it also helps you have a little bit more purchase on there and a little bit bigger barrel. So hopefully this video today has helped you a lot when it comes to a handheld release, and especially thumb button releases, as far as learning to shoot these, getting yourself set up correctly, and going through this correctly. Keep an eye out for the members only video if you are a member of this channel. If you want to learn more about that, there's a link down below that'll tell you the different packages and the benefits you get for being a member of this channel. Keep eye out for the YouTube shorts. If you don't subscribe to this channel already, please do so. I'm trying to really build that out this year, and make sure you have the bell notifications on. It'll give you alerts when I'm putting out videos. The feedback that I've gotten from a lot of you is you want to see shooting more. So I will probably do some extra videos here and there that are on top of these that are not on Tuesdays, and you'll want to have those bell notifications on for that, so you can be able to see me when I'm at league night or at a tournament or shooting or whatever I'm doing, so that you can get some extra different footage of all this. But appreciate you watching. I appreciate your feedback on the videos, and let me know what I can do to make it better for y'all. Y'all have a good day. I'll see you soon.